Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the wilds of the Greater Kruger National Park, the western fringes thereof. You are on a live sunrise safari, and just now we'll show you the magnificent sun coming up. My name is James Hendry. On camera we've got the giraffe-like form of Brian, and on the other vehicle Scott Dyson and the slightly more diminutive Tebbs, about my size. Now, we've come out here on this beautiful morning. It's warm, about 21 degrees centigrade, a relieving coolth after the night, I must say, and we've come to look for the dogs. Now, if you were on the sunset safari yesterday, you would have seen an incredible interaction between the elephants and the wild dogs that was around this area. Scott is driving through here now, seeing if he can find a sign of the dogs. We haven't found any yet. We did see some charging in Nyala. That means they were running away, looking very terrified, but we haven't found anything yet in terms of the dogs. They would have got up early in the morning and they would have gone hunting at the very, very first sign of light. As soon, you know, their eyes are they're certainly diurnal hunters, but their eyes are certainly good enough, better than ours, and but okay, in that sort of grey dawn light, that's when they like to go hunting. So they'll be around here somewhere, we hope. We'll keep looking for them while we have them on the property. It would just be crazy not to spend as much time with them as possible. Like I say, you're on a live safari, and we'd like to talk to you at all stages during the drive. Hashtag Safari Live if you've got any questions on the tweet, or questions at wildearth.tv if you want to email us. Just listening to some alarm calls. It's very important to stop and listen to alarm calls. For some Franklins, but I think they've calmed down. Anyway, right, we're going to get on with it. We're not going to sit around here any longer, try and disentangle myself from this wire, and we're going to head off down here. Just keep an eye out for the tracks. This is a roundabout where the dogs were yesterday. We'll do our best to find them. You are most welcome. Here we go. Great excitement. It would be very embarrassing if I'd stalled there, of course. So Scott is knocking about here. I see an impala looking a bit too relaxed to be surrounded by wild dogs. We'll drive quite quickly because the dogs will move quite quickly during the night. Not during the night, during the morning. On the hunt, they'll be moving at quite a speed. This is where the puppies were left yesterday during the course of the morning. I'm just going to get a quick update from Scott. Here we go. He's talking to me now. Go ahead. Sorry. Okay, copy that. There's the sun. Isn't that magnificent? Scott's just saying where he was checking. He hasn't found any sign yet. Copy, Scott. I'm going to do the Rebecca's maybe, and then I think I'll probably, yeah, I'll go east along Gari, mate. That's stunning. Oh, there is some rain predicted for today, which is marvellous news indeed. I don't think very much, but it is predicted. Right, so Scott's over there. He's basically, if you can see my hand, you can obviously, he's going to go off to the front of your screen, which is basically due west, check down the boundary with Arathusa, and we're going to go down here and check down the boundary. Here they are. This is where they were yesterday, so these could be old tracks. Puppies and adults. Now I don't know if you can see on the road there, you'll just see a whole lot of kind of indentations. That's from the dogs. So that's their puppies and adults. Now I don't know if you can see on the road there, you'll just see a whole lot of kind of indentations. That's from the dogs. So that's their tracks. A little bit of a lottery. Should I drive quickly to try and find them, or sort of very carefully drive around here so we don't miss any signs? Because they move so fast. Tracks of hyenas here as well. I wonder if they're not through here. We're just going to do a loop around here and then we'll come back towards this area and see if we can't follow those tracks. Let's head across to Scott quickly. He's got a couple of signal issues, but he also has an elephant with him. So go and say good morning to him, and I will hopefully have some good news for you when you come back.
Hello everyone, and look at the beautiful pink sky together with this massive elephant bull. Shame he's missing a tooth or a tusk. They are essentially just modified teeth, those tusks growing out of the elephant's mouths. And like I said, this is a big old bull. Exciting start to the morning, searching frantically for any sign of this pack of wild dogs. And the great thing about being on safari is that even though you may be looking for wild dogs or any animal at a point in time, you can come flying around the corner and bump into an animal like this. So a pleasant surprise for myself, Scott, if you haven't met me before, and I'm teamed up with Tebs on camera. Let's see if we can get your head. Actually, thankfully we're not going to have to turn around. I'm just going to try and creep forward quickly and see what this Ellie does next. He's interestingly sampling a silver cluster leaf, which is not a tree that they ordinarily feed on too much. What is he going to do here? Like I said, usually not high up on the elephant's list of enjoyed treats. Not the most nutritious of trees, obviously, but it seems like it's almost just using it as a pillow to rest his trunk on. He's sniffing something intently here. What is it? What can you smell, old boy? Is it us? Is it some ladies nearby? What has got your attention there? Really interesting stuff, that. Like I said, they don't feed on these trees very often. And he's continuing to try and work out what it is. It's like he's looking for something with his nostrils there. Still searching. What are you looking for, boy? This is awesome. Well, of course, it would be wonderful to know exactly what he is trying to achieve here. But then again, the fact that we don't know is also quite nice, because some things in nature will simply go untold or unsaid. Just going to creep forward a little bit. No, he's changed his body angle, giving Tibbs a bit of opportunity to let us know what's going on. I can't even begin to work out what it might be. I'd love to be able to hazard a few guesses, but he's smelling all over, on the ground, from one tree to the next tree. Obviously it's something that's passed through these trees, I'm not sure. But for elephants to stop feeding for this amount of time and not be asleep, it's something to read into. They feed almost permanently when they are on the move like this. The wind is blowing very gently from him towards us. So that's the direction that the wind's moving in. Which means he will be kind of hopefully walking towards whatever this... Oh, there we go. He's broken a branch of another silver cluster leaf. Just going to creep forward a tiny bit now. What on earth are you doing, mister? So he snapped two branches there that you can see kind of lying horizontally. He is plucking off a few leaves now. Will he feed? Ah, he's gone for a vine that's growing on the silver cluster leaf. That's what he could smell. I'm just going to try and creep forward again now because we can hardly see what he's doing. But I did just see him peeling off a vine. It's growing on this tree. Let's see if this angle is not going to be a little bit better. Well, that explains it. And in retrospect, it kind of makes perfect sense. A small vine growing along a tree that it ordinarily doesn't feed on. And that's what he's been searching for. Now the whole tree is going to get pushed over in order for him to try and access this vine. I'm going to move all the way around. Hold on a second, everyone. Oh. Well, there's a bit of a gap. It's not the best, but let's just try and make this work for us. At least we can... Ah, so he's gone now from a vine that he fed on briefly to probably trying to dig out a bulb, like a potato, you could say. Look at him using his foot there to try and loosen the soil. And this is going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing to see if he does in fact manage to pluck this bulb. Oh, there it goes. Has he got it? Yeah, he's got it. Look at it. There's that little potato-like bulb. And this is what he's been searching for. So even though he temporarily wasn't feeding, which surprised me, he was planning on trying to find some food. There's the potato. And again, I'm using the word potato very loosely. It is just a bulb like a potato. It's trying to dust off the sand from it now. And it's interesting how versatile that trunk is. Mead just sent through a comment a little bit earlier. Mead made a great analogy and said he was using his trunk like a periscope from a submarine. And that's exactly what he was doing, Mead. I wonder if there's another bulb growing there, possibly. What I also wonder is if he fed on that vine and whether that vine was actually connected to this bulb and whether he consumed the whole plant from bulb or roots to leaves, or whether there were two separate plants. But what was remarkable was that from quite some distance off he managed to smell it. Here he comes, he's a big boy. You're going to see some beautiful orange glow in the background now, the setting sun. Sorry, the rising sun. Well, not a bad start to the morning. James is still looking around for the wild dog. He hasn't had any further sign of them. A little bit earlier on I had some Inyala that came kind of running out of the bush towards me. They looked like they were quite panicked, and that's the only clue we've had so far. Now I think it's going to be worthwhile for you guys to do some screenshots. We are going to hopefully have some beautiful views of this big boy. There we go, the sun rising in the background. Can you believe this? And this is a very big elephant bull. He's probably standing at around 3.5 to 4 meters in height, and Rosanna in New Zealand, he is certainly fully grown. I don't think he's going to get much bigger. He is in his prime. He doesn't look to be on the too old side of life. I would put him at a very rough guess at around 40 years of age. So they can live to about 60. And let's take a closer look. You can get a size comparison between him and some impala which are just next to him. He is ginormous. Look at how small the impala look. So there you go, Roseanne. That gives you an idea of just how big he is. Got a great question through from Sharon in Pittsburgh regarding the trunks of elephants. I'm just going to stop here to allow Tibbs to show you a bit of the vista quickly. It's such a beautiful morning, and look at that. And while we discuss the trunks of elephants from Sharon in Pittsburgh, she would like to know a little bit more about what I think about elephants, and especially the young elephants, when they begin to learn how to use their trunk. It does take time, as you pointed out, Sharon, and it's not an easy thing to do, but Sharon has asked whether or not those little prehensile fingertips are a little bit easier to control, and I think certainly they are, Sharon. It's just going to be less muscles to control. It's just going to kind of be an opening and closing technique that the young elephants would have to learn in order to be able to use that prehensile fingertip. Whereas the rest of the trunk, to move it every which way, I think that is where the complications come in. I'm told that there are 180,000 different muscle fascicles. Now, I don't know entirely what that means, but basically it means there's hundreds of tiny little portions of muscle that can allow the trunk to bend in every single direction imaginable, and to get control and to be able to manage all those muscles is where the complication comes in. So I think you've raised a good point. The young elephants will probably be able to use that fingertip far quicker than the rest of their trunk. Not a bad situation to be in a traffic jam behind an elephant bull while searching for wild dog. I think we could have certainly got off to a west start to the morning. He's now feeding on the leaves of this bush willow. And I love the way they're such relaxed animals. Well, not all the time, but he certainly is in a very, very relaxed mood, which is fortunate for us. And they're such calming animals. He's certainly on the go slow. Now, for those of you who were not lucky enough to be on the sunset safari yesterday, I must let you know and warn you in advance that you missed out. And you're probably going to start seeing some wonderful clips of Brent mainly, but I think Jamie was also in the sighting. And they had a wonderful, wonderful sighting with elephants as well as wild dogs this morning. Yesterday afternoon. And that is still likely for us this morning. It could well happen again. And there's some incredible shots of a whole herd of elephants rallying their troops and chasing these wild dogs that we're looking for now. James has just found some of their tracks. Not too far from where we are. So we're in a good position here. They do cover such big distances in a very short space of time, which makes tracking them down very difficult. But we are certainly in an area where they could pop up at any moment. Name I haven't heard before. I think it's Dex Gecko. That's an interesting name. Good to have you on safari with us. And apologies, that's Gex Gecko. And Gex Gecko would like to know how many muscles are there in an elephant's trunk. As I said a little bit earlier, 180,000 different muscle fascicles, which I think basically means little portions of muscle. So how many exact muscles, I'm not too sure, but there certainly are a lot of complicated muscles and tendons and ligaments in those trunks, I'm guessing, in order for them to be so versatile. What would be ideal is if we could try and loop ahead of him and get some frontal shots, but the vegetation either side of us is quite thick, so I'm not going to try and do that just yet. I think we might have a little window of opportunity here to get around him. A little gap that's just opened up. Just veered off the road as we did the same thing. So my master plan may not work out as well as I wanted it to. Go ahead, James. I'm just going to chat with James quickly. I am on Zoe, still south of Ballinati's, north of Ballinati's. I got stuck with an early bull here. Okay, copy that. Okay, well, as you can see, he has veered off the road now and is heading into some quite thick bush. And I think you guys probably won't mind if we also go and help James in the search for the wild dog. They could be nearby and we don't get to see them very often, so I think it's definitely worth us making the most of that. So we're going to leave this boy behind and start heading into the area where kind of James is. And why don't you guys head onto James's vehicle for the most recent of updates on that pack of wild dogs and where he thinks they might be.
Hello everybody, welcome back again to this wild dog hunt where the hunting is turning into more of an intellectual exercise at the moment. I really don't know where they've gone. We found quite a lot of tracks, they're going all over the place. So, we've just come up a road called Rebecca's Road. Scott is actually just up there, and the dogs were heading down this road, and two of them seem to head off towards the west. So Scott will go around like that and check if they haven't crossed that way, but they're not with the puppies. Just two tracks of adults. So I suspect that they're still on the hunt, or they were when they made those tracks, certainly. And so it's going to be worthwhile just to stick around here for a little while and see if we can't pick up other tracks and sounds, maybe of them feeding. They make a tremendous noise when they're feeding. Anyway, we're going to have a quick look at the sun. The sun has just come up. I parked you behind the bush, haven't I, Brian? Oh, well, that's all right. And it's really it was the most magnificent sunrise. It was all sorts of pinks and gingers and oranges, just really stunning and very special to be out here. But even as the sun sits where it is now, and we sit at about, it's probably 5:30, 5:45, I can already feel the heat starting to build. It was amazing. All right, let's carry on. We're going to just loop around this block once more. Scott will go and check down to the west and see if they haven't crossed. But certainly you would expect by now that if they did go on the hunt early morning, which I think they probably would have, then they may well have gone to ground already. So they would have killed and fed, and then there'd be the puppies playing around, the adults would be having a rest. So we can take it a little more easily as we drive. We've been so tremendously lucky here lately. We've had a lot of wild dog sightings, and Kelly, you want to know how many different packs we've been looking at. And the answer, Kelly, is 2, which on this tiny piece of land is so special that we've been able to watch 2 packs of dogs. The Investec pack is just 3 adults and 11 pups, and then there's the Sands pack, also apparently called the Half-Tail pack, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 11 adults and 9 pups. So to me, this little pack is the most exciting because that they have managed, these 3 adults have managed to raise all those puppies on their own. I'm just quickly going to get hold of Brent. Go ahead, Brent. Sorry, just go again with that. You're just breaking up. You sound like you're in a bathroom. You're not in a bathroom, everybody. It's just the radio. Okay, copy, confirm hyenas. So Brent is also out looking for the dogs, because if there are dogs on the property, Brent is definitely not going to be in his bed. And he's found a couple of hyenas, but no luck on the dogs just yet. Seen a few things. We saw some nyala come screaming out of here very early on, but no further signs of the doggies. So Kelly, like you were asking, 2 packs, just really, and on this small piece of land, I mean, it's all relative, of course. In Europe this would be considered an enormous farm. In South Africa it's considered a pretty, it's a little area of wildlife land, and wild dogs have a home range of up to 1,000 square kilometers. Now that is enormous. 1,000 square kilometers is almost 100,000 hectares, so 240,000 acres for one wild dog pack. That's their kind of maximum home range size in this area. They can be a bit smaller. I think the Investec pack is probably operating on about 40,000 hectares, which is a bit smaller, obviously. But they can be, you know, they can range that widely. I think what we're going to do, everybody, is go up towards quarantine clearings where Brent is. We've got some hyenas there. Let's just see what they're doing there. Just keep an eye out on the road. And then Brenty can carry on looking for the dogs. I'm going to tell him I'm coming there. Brent, we'll make our way there. Bouncing around the place, of course. You have to drive a little bit quickly if you're looking for dogs. Yesterday we almost drove past them in the morning. Scott and I were out trying to do some tracking, and they are remarkable the way they go into the shade and they lie down and they flatten their ears and they become almost invisible. They're a brilliant colour, and I'm very interested that there are no other animals coloured like that at all out here. While we were chatting about the colour there, this is a hyena track. Shamrock, you want to know about the white colour on the dogs and why they're white on the predominantly towards the base of their bodies, so not so much on the dorsal side, more on the ventral side. And why would they be that white colour? Does it have something to do with light reflection during crepuscular time, so during sunset and sunrise? I'm sure it probably does. I think you probably find that they follow each other using those little white patches, because the black and brown are beautifully camouflaged when they're running through the bush, and they probably do use certainly the white tails that they have. They've all got white tail tips. Only ever seen one dog with a black tail tip, and those white tail tips definitely help them to run. The white on the base, I'm not so sure. Sorry, confirm tracks. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. Yeah, they've gone into Arathusa. Sorry, I'm on quarantine. Alright, so the pack, I'm afraid, Scott has found, we found the tracks going off west, off that road down there, and Scott found them going west across into Arathusa. So we'll probably, one of us will try and head across there. We've got a couple of issues with our repeater at the moment, so Scott will head across there as soon as possible to try and get in there. Right, now these hyenas. Brent, what is your position exactly? Going the wrong way. I think I'm on quarantine now. Following on the colour, Shamrock, you want to know, does the colour change regionally with the wild dogs? Shamrock, no, not as far as I know. In Africa, if you put one dog here, it's likely to be unrecognisable from another dog, from a dog that is in East Africa. So I don't think it makes a huge difference where they are, but it might. It might be some very subtle regional difference. You'd expect there to be, because of course the populations are completely separated. They don't intermingle much, if at all. Right, now, where are we here? That's a very disconcerting sound, Brian. There they are. Hyenas. Now apparently they're eating a buffalo leg. Where they retrieved this from is anyone's guess. Oh, that's wonderful. There's 4 of them there. Fantastic. Look at that. So that's a very sort of pregnant looking female coming past us. And there are the youngsters, who we haven't seen for a while now. This is our clan, of course. This clan does lurk around here on Juma. This is their kind of central core territory, and where they found that buffalo leg, I cannot imagine. It is really very interesting indeed. So these little ones we haven't seen for a while. We know where the den is, but of course there's been a real impossibility of getting in there in vehicles, and so we haven't seen them for a while, and they're looking in excellent condition. And there's one other adult here. There he is. Such an underrated animal. And I do bang on about this a bit, but you know, people come to Africa and they ask to see the big 5, and you say, well, what about fascinating creatures like hyenas and wild dogs and giraffe? And well, people are just so confused that they're not part of the big 5. And these magnificent hyenas, I think, are one of the most underrated animals you can ever find out here. They are exciting, they're resourceful, they're intelligent, and when they're young they're quite attractive. When they get a bit older, like that female, they're not quite so good looking. Stresses and strains of being an African scavenger. I'm just quite flummoxed as to how they got hold of this buffalo leg and where it came from. Sorry, I'm just going to help these guys get into the sighting. There are a couple of guys who want to come to the sighting, so I'm just going to help them come in here. Come, just drive down that quarantine road that goes to the south of the clearings. Past the bush dinner site, you'll see me there. Now they're looking around. They're just getting to the point where they're sufficiently independent not to have to be with the adults all the time. They're magnificent little things. Look how fluffy they are. But where on earth that buffalo leg came from, I cannot imagine. I will be very wary. Look at the colours on them. And if I am not mistaken, I think these are two little males that were born into the clan a little while back. They'd be now probably I think they sit at about 7 or 8 months now. Look at that. So, quite interestingly, of course, the inevitable question is, let's go and follow that selfish hyena. The inevitable question is, what is the difference? There's a comparison between these guys and the wild dogs. They're obviously not related to each other. Hyenas are more closely related to cats, and so we call their little ones cubs, not pups. And these chaps are 8 months old, so they're about 4 months older than the wild dog pups. And the size difference it's not that obvious, at this stage. But I would say that these guys actually weigh about double. They're much more thicker set. They're a bit taller. They're not much taller, but they will be at their peak. They'll be almost twice the size of a wild dog. So the wild dogs probably grow slightly faster because they don't spend nearly as much time in the den. Certainly these guys haven't become enormous in the intervening months since we first found them. But the wild dogs will grow much faster. A year-old wild dog is indistinguishable from an adult, because the hyenas will continue to get bigger, for 2 or 3 years. These guys also will live maybe for 12 years if they're lucky, hyenas out here. Dogs, as I've said before, 80% of the dogs in the Kruger National Park are less than 5 years old. So they don't really live they don't live to ripe old ages. Oh. And thank you, Jennifer in Toronto, for your very kind answer to my query as to where the buffalo leg came from. You say it came probably from a buffalo. Jennifer, I think that is an excellent suggestion, and I thank you very much for clearing up the mystery as to where the buffalo leg came from. I suppose I should probably clarify. I wonder where the rest of the buffalo carcass is, because that doesn't look very old to me, and it also isn't smelling particularly vile. And if it was a freshly killed carcass, I think it would, at least if it wasn't fairly fresh, I think it would stink. So I wonder if the adults who've gone off into the drainage line just to the south of us haven't got a big one, or maybe the rest remains of a kill there. I don't know. Hyenas, remember, while they are brilliant scavengers, are also brilliant hunters. So while these chaps are scavenging on this little piece of buffalo, they will absolutely hunt. And thank you, Ravi. You say we should look around, look around for a three-legged buffalo. Yeah. That'd certainly be, if we found a three-legged buffalo, I think you'd be fairly convinced that that's where the leg came from. But you also say that there was quite a lot of groaning and hyena whooping on the Djuma Dam cam during the course of the night. So that is quite interesting. Thank you. I think we'll do a little turn around there a bit later and see if something doesn't pop up there. Nobody's been there. We've been kind of fascinated by trying to find the dogs. And maybe a pride of lions has snuck into the reserve during the course of the night and killed a buffalo. Who knows? That is the great excitement of being out here, of course, is that you just don't know. And sometimes we see so much. I'm sure our viewers must think it's a zoo. And then you have those quiet days where the heat builds to 38 degrees, the wind basically blow dries the landscape, and you find 3 fork-tailed drongos and a blue waxbill all hiding from you as well. This is a bit gruesome. So we were just comparing the dogs and the wild dogs, and Anna Marie and Diane, you were obviously part of that sighting we had the other day. That's marking a bit of territory with an anal gland, and that's why I'll get back to your question now, Anna Marie and Diane. Very sensitive noses, and they will mark, all members of the clan will mark territory, even if they live almost alone. So Anna Marie and Diane, you were obviously part of that sighting where we had the wild dogs almost killing a hyena the other day, and you'd like to know, where is that hyena and how is it? I don't know, we haven't seen it, and I couldn't tell you. I watched footage of that sighting. Absolutely incredible stuff. And I'm surprised that hyena got away. I really am. I think the only thing that saves it in the end is the fact that those dogs are, they're really nervous of getting in the way of the hyena's jaws. They can't afford to sort of, a bit like a boxer will take a punch or two. They can't afford to do that. If they get bitten by those jaws, they could lose a leg almost instantaneously. So while they're faster than the hyenas, they really can't afford to take that much in the way of a risk. So I'm afraid we don't know where that hyena is. So a 3-legged buffalo is what we're looking for now. I'm just going to ask Tax if he's got any ideas. Tax on? Tax on. Vai come qui. Lì, là. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So interesting that Taxons reckons maybe that there was a buffalo kill on Chitwa, which is quite far from here, but hyenas will pick up pieces of carcass and come and hand them to the youngsters when they aren't foraging with them. So maybe this came from there. That's probably quite a good suggestion. But Aubrey is now on the southern end of the reserve, looking just to see if there aren't some drag marks there. So, Mary, thank you for your suggestion that maybe this was the remains of one of the buffalo kills that the Salala Pride made, but that was on Arathusa, which is probably a bit far from here, but it's not impossible. It is possible. I think that's the territory of a different clan of hyenas, though, and I think that you'll find that these guys will not stray too far from their own clan territory. Aubrey, like I say, is checking south. Scott is down the west, so if there is a drag mark coming from there, well, then that might indicate where this comes from. But you can see even this youngster was able to just pick this leg up as opposed to drag it along, so I'm not sure. And that's heavy. I mean, that is a pretty heavy piece of a limb there. I'd say probably weighs in the region of 7 kilograms, so say about 18 pounds, and to pick that up in your jaws like that and walk around with it as though it's a little stick is quite astonishing. Alright, let's head across to Scott quickly. He's got some updates on the wild dogs. I don't think he's found them yet, but he'll tell you the state of where the tracks are going. I'll see you just now.
So, awesome sighting with James. That's great to hear. And we do have some good news. It's not great for us, but it's great for other people who are enjoying a safari here in the Sabi Sands, and that is that the wild dog have been found. And what's interesting is that they have covered the whole portion of Arathusa in a very short space of time. They've been located on the property next door. Morning. Morning. And I guess the vehicle that's just raced past us is racing in that direction. Sadly, we don't have traverse where the wild dog have gone. We cannot drive around that land. But what's interesting is how much distance they've covered. Like I said, they've run through the whole of Arathusa from east to west and crossed into the next property called Elephant Plains. So James and I were on their trail, just very far behind it. So at least that is that, and we now know where the pack is, and we can focus on looking for some other animals. I'm probably going to drive our whole southern boundary, which we are now, and then once we get to our eastern boundary of Djuma, I'm going to head north up towards Buffelshoek Dam. And that is, of course, only if we don't find any interesting tracks or animals along the way. And what I would like to do is just show you a bird's nest that we had a view of for the first time a few days back. And it'll be nice to get a quick update on how the little fledglings are doing. There's 2 chicks in the nest, and it looks like they're at that point where they could start flying at any moment. They're quite big chicks, and they're just around the corner here. Well, they can't really be around the corner because this is a long straight road, but they're just up ahead. thanks to the cloud cover that we're experiencing. Now, where is this marula tree that we're looking for? I think it's somewhere close by here. Where have you gone? Tricky thing is they all look very similar, these trees. The spot we needed to be in. Okay, Tibbs, if you just kind of follow my finger to that little blob over there, that's what we're looking for. Right a bit. There we go. So not too... Oh, there we go. An adult's just returned to feed the chicks. This is what we were hoping to happen the other day. Although it doesn't look like the adult brought any food along. So can't feed them, but it has come to check in on them. And this is a white-crowned shrike, whose nest we found a few days ago. Immaculately neat little nest made up of grass. On the inside, and a layer of spider webs is used to line it and wrap it all up around this marula branch. The two chicks seem to be fast asleep, not showing too much signs of life. The other afternoon when we were here, they were jumping about and you could see them a lot more clearly, but now there isn't a huge deal to see. Oh, there goes the adult. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there's a woodpecker drumming gently next to us, looking for some food. I can't see it, but I can hear it. So that may pop into the scene at any moment, but for now, it's just the sleepy chicks. And while there's not too much happening here, we're going to continue, and maybe we'll return this afternoon or later on to see if these chicks are a little bit more active. But we're going to send you across to James, who's still with those hyena.
So from some baby birds back to the baby hyenas. Those baby birds, I think, are just the most fascinating things. Scott showed them to me yesterday, and what a wonderful spot that was to see those little white-crowned shrikes. And I don't know what they would look like today, but they were nestled so comfortably in that incredibly perfect nest yesterday. And always amazes me to see different parenting styles that animals have out here. And of course, one of the things that people ask the most about is about parenting with animals, mainly mammals, but the parenting style that most closely reflects our own, our human one, of course, are so many of the birds where the male and female set up a home, they have their youngsters, and the youngsters then fledge and they go off. And often they're a monogamous pair, which of course humans are nominally monogamous. And very few of the mammals that we see adopt that same kind of social behavior. And it's interesting because I think that the reason we ask about it so much is that it helps us to identify with animals. We want to have something in common with them. And with the hyenas we certainly don't in terms of our social structure. but with those little white-crowned shrikes, very similar. And these two hyenas, while they certainly won't be required to fend for themselves, I'm sure that was this buffalo leg has been given to them as a gift. They are getting to the point now where they will start to forage a little bit on their own. And because I think they're two males, what you'll find is that they'll start to spend more and more time away from the clan. They'll probably live with each other, but they will eventually disperse to another clan entirely after about a year or so. So the males have to leave, and the females will stay within the natal clan. That's also unlike human beings most of the time. I think daughters tend to be slightly easier to get out of the house than recalcitrant young sons. They really are in the most superb condition. These shiny golden coats in what is some magnificent morning light out here. Look at them as the light has just come out from behind a cloud and is now shining on these beautiful animals.
Feel some rain.
Can you feel some rain? Oh, Brian says he can feel some rain. Quickly, everybody, pull out the raincoats, batten down the hatches. Now Diane has made a very plausible suggestion. The lions did make a kill on Torchwood a little while back. I think it's probably I think this buffalo is a bit younger than that, Diane, but it's certainly possible that this leg came from Torchwood. That's a pretty good suggestion. So Torchwood is quite far from here, but it's definitely within the territory of this clan, and we've watched, we watched these hyenas drag a kind of half-grown kudu about 2 kilometers, so a leg like this, to come and dump for the youngsters to have a bite on would have presented no trouble at all from Torchwood. So yes, Diane, good suggestion, could well be. And remember, the leg will often be left by the lions because there's not much flesh on it, but there is lots in the bones, and the hyenas, especially a young hyena, will spend the time, picking it clean and eventually crushing the bones and sucking out the marrow. And the marrow, I don't know if any of you, my mother certainly has always been an enormous fan of bone marrow on toast. And sounds a bit grim, but it is the most nutritious part of any bone, of any meat actually, and it's so interesting to watch. Again, I find the development of human beings in Africa tremendously fascinating, and our ancestors, when they came out onto the plains, they came out of the trees and then onto the plains around where those tremendous migrations of animals used to be. And we were not hunters, we were scavengers. And the thing that we scavenged for most, the thing that we need with our big brains, is an enormous amount of fat. And the only way that you can get fat off a animal like this, or off a wild animal which doesn't put on fat like we do, is to go to the bone marrow. And so apparently there are lots and lots of sites around East Africa where we used to crush bones and suck out the bone marrow, because that's really good for brain development. And that's exactly what these hyenas will be doing. They'll be trying eventually to get into the bone marrow, which is brilliant, brilliant nutrition. Brian, while we're sitting here, I don't know if you can see this little fellow over here. There is a tiny, tiny little caterpillar there. Look at him. He's tiny. So you can see his size, obviously. And he's now running away from me at high speed. Come on. That's it. Isn't that sweet? Anyway, I don't know where he's come from. He's obviously fallen off a tree, poor fellow, on our way out of here. And I'll put him onto the grass, and he can hopefully turn into a little butterfly or moth later on in his life. He will probably be picked up by a starling shortly and devoured. Anyway, that's why there are so many caterpillars. It's a very interesting strategy that so many of the insects out here have. In fact, insects throughout the world have a very different strategy from mammals, and the insects are, I think, if I remember my ecology from first year university correctly, they're K selectors versus R selectors, and the K selector will produce millions and millions of offspring, knowing that most of them will not get anywhere close to breeding age. Most of them will be eaten, like termite alates, for example, are a brilliant example of K selectors. Whereas an R selector would be something like these hyenas, which produce one baby at a time, and they invest in a huge amount in parental care. So birds and mammals are quite often these R selectors, while the insects and other animals are what we call K selectors, and they basically provide almost no parental care, and their babies are born and most of them get eaten, but sufficient will survive. That seems to be the more ancient look at it. Right, and a brilliant question from 9-year-old Josh. Thank you, Josh. I'm not sure that I can answer this question because these numbers always jump out of my head. But you want to know the PSI, and what that means is the pressure per square inch of a hyena's bite versus a crocodile's bite. A crocodile apparently has a higher one, Josh, so it does have a higher one than this hyena does, but the hyenas, for the mammals out here, have the most powerful bite. But apparently a jaguar in the jaguar in South America has an even more powerful bite than a hyena. But I think pound for pound, the thing that you don't want to be bitten by the most is a crocodile. They definitely have a higher pressure bite than it's not pressure per square inch, it's pounds per square inch. So that's how you measure the pressure of the bite. Nice one, Josh, thank you for that. At 9 years old, that's a pretty astute question. Hopefully you will turn into a young champion of the wilderness, which we so richly need out here, of course. Well, all over the world. Probably sit here another 5 minutes or so and then go and see what else we can find. We'll probably head towards Buffelshoek Dam and see if that great concentration of birds that we saw there the other day is still around. All the storks and the waders. Now, we know that there were some lions on Arathusa a few days ago, and Lynn, you're asking about whether they're still there or do we have any updates on them. We don't have any updates on them. There are no lions there at the moment. Scott will keep an eye on what's going on in Arathusa this morning. But as far as I know, there are no lions there. I've had no reports of the Nkahuma Pride either for for the last day or so. They certainly were on Buffelshoek for a while. I'm not sure where they went. And then, of course, we had a Styx female. We think it was a Styx female, and 2 of the Birmingham boys. In fact, 3 of the Birmingham boys on Torchwood the other day. And one of them seemed to be injured, which I think is quite interesting. And I wonder if there isn't some kind of disharmony, if you like, in the coalition. One of them seems to be older than the others, and I wonder if he hasn't caused the irritation of the young guns. It'll be interesting to see if that coalition does actually survive to truly impose itself on this territory. So, Lynn, I'm afraid I can't tell you anything further about lions on Arethusa, but definitely Scott will be able to do that the next time you talk to him. And you can see how a hyena's teeth will eventually, with age, go blunt. And that's often a really good way to age all of these predators, is by how blunt their teeth have got. And mostly, of course, they're using those carnassial teeth, which are the molars, and they come over each other like scissors come over each other. Blades of scissors come over each other, so they're not used for chewing. It's a lovely example of them being used to slice the meat off the bone. Or in this case, the last bits of sinew. This must be a pretty hungry hyena, because there really is not much left on that thing at all. Now very nice inquiry from Virtual Tourist. We describe wild dogs and their hunting strategy as coursing. So they course after things. To course means to run something down until it's tired. And that's what wild dogs do. It's also what hyenas do. So Virtual Tourist, hyenas have exactly the same strategy, except they're not quite as fast as wild dogs, and they will basically just harass something until it gets tired. And so that's precisely how they hunt. And in a big clan, they're formidable. They're not as fast as wild dogs. They're not as fast as most of the predators out here. But they can keep going and going and going and going, and they just don't get tired. They're perfectly designed for stamina. Another difficult one about the pressure that a hyena's jaws exert. Kira, you want to know how much pressure will it take to sever a buffalo's leg from its body? Kira, again, I can't give you a number by any stretch of the imagination, but I can tell you that this leg would not have been bitten off. It would have probably been twisted off. I suspect they would have taken hold of it, twisted it, and that would have broken the joint and pushed it away. To crush a leg like that, I think an adult hyena even would struggle. They might be able to do it, but I don't think that they would have actually bitten it off. It would have just been a kind of twisting motion, much easier to. You can see the balls. You can see the ball and socket joint now. That's the ball side of it, of course. Socket would have been on the coccyx or hip, on the hip bone of that hapless hyena. No, not the hip bone at all. I think that's the front leg. So it would have been on the shoulder. It would have been attached to the scapula. And what, of course, one of the obvious things to ask here, and I'm surprised I haven't actually spoken about it, but thank you, Lucy, for prompting it. is there a hierarchy here amongst these two hyenas, that one of them is eating more than the other? Lucy, it's possible. I think that they're siblings, and I think they're males, and so while there will be a hierarchy, it won't be particularly defined. I also think that you may find, and certainly I've seen this with lions, often, we find them well after they've found their kills, or they've made their kills or scavenged, and then the dominant ones will eat first. And so it could be that the other one has just had enough to eat and is now allowing this lower ranking one to eat more. So it would be impossible to say who was the more dominant here, given that I think they're both males, and given that I think that they're siblings, and I don't think there'll be a tremendous hierarchy amongst them. And that also, I think, will probably cover your inquiry, Rebecca, in Santa Barbara, just about the hierarchy in hyenas. It's a tremendously fascinating social structure, the hyenas. They really are incredible. A matriarchal society led by the females. Females have a very strict hierarchy. Males not so much, but they're all ranked below the females. They will be totally dominated by the females, will the males, and they are much larger than the males. So Kelly, thank you very much for your kind comments, that you do manage to learn something almost all the time when I'm taking a drive. That's very kind of you. And Georgianne in Illinois, you have confirmed that marrow is a delicacy in the United States, and it's cooked up and put on some very spread on anything apparently. I think that marrow is delicious, and I certainly there was a startled yelp in my ear from Jerry in the Final Control when I said that my mother ate marrow on toast. I'm glad, Georgianne, that you've confirmed that my family is not a bunch of what shall we say, savages, if you like. Thank you for that. All right, I think let's move on from here and see what else we can see. I'd be very interested, Josh, you're 9 years old. You must be extremely au fait with using the interweb, and you can probably already write programs at your age and living in the States. See if you can find a reputable source, so something like maybe in the National Geographic website would have it, just the numbers of a hyena's bite and perhaps a crocodile's bite as well. And then let's have a discussion about that, because I think it is very interesting, but I can just never remember the numbers. Right, let's carry on and see what else we can find. Goodbye, little hyena. Have a marvelous morning. Just drive around him. Obvious thing when you see a wild dog is to compare it with a domestic dog. And Gecko, you say you're a dog trainer, where you come from in your spare time, and you want to know can hyenas and wild dogs be domesticated? I think we've chatted quite extensively about domesticating wild dogs, and the short answer is no. When they get older, you can raise them from pups, and they will be very confiding with you, but when they get older they wander. They have such an instinct to go for space that, and I'm sure if they were to be selectively bred for the period that wolves have been selectively bred, I'm pretty sure you could domesticate them, but a wild dog straight out of the bush will eventually wander away. Hyenas, however, quite interestingly, there are two groups of people, one in Nigeria and one in Ethiopia, that have not quite domesticated them, but certainly live amongst them. And I think the one in Nigeria, they live on a rubbish tip together, and the hyenas will go in there, and the people feed them, and they will walk around the people. And of course, I mean, out here, hyenas do sometimes cause human death. And over there, they've managed to build a relationship with them where they haven't, where they don't. And then in Ethiopia, there's a small cult around a hyena, and they domesticate the odd hyena. I think they are probably more domesticatable than the wild dogs would be. Again, if you were to selectively breed them for calmness and for, select them for domestic characteristics like not biting your hand off, for example, would be an excellent characteristic of a domestic animal. I think what you'd find is that eventually you could probably domesticate them. But they would take a lot longer than any animal from the New World or from Europe to domesticate, and that's because they obviously evolved with human beings, and that makes them that much more afraid of us. Nice question. Thank you, Gex. So those of you who have perhaps just joined in or just tuned in, maybe you're in Britain and you're obviously 2 hours behind us in what is probably a fairly chilly part of the world now, or any other part of Europe really. Julia, I think you just tuned in and you say, was that a giraffe leg? No, it was a buffalo leg. We don't know where it came from. I was very kindly, Jane in Toronto very kindly pointed out to me that it came from a buffalo, which was very kind. Thank you, Jane, for that. But Julia, it was a buffalo, and we're not sure which buffalo came off or what happened to the rest of that buffalo. And various guesses, and good ones, I think. There were. I saw a tree that looked like a wild dog for a second. There are a lot of them, those trees. Lost my train of thought completely. I was so excited. So there were some suggestions that the leg may have come from Torchwood. There was a kill there a little while back. There was a kill on Chitwa. So that's possible. Don't know. We had hyenas in camp yesterday evening. Someone didn't shut the gate. I think I'll have to have a word with Brent Deere-Smith about that later on. Probably communicate with him through the means of a stick. It's going to be impossible to film in this light, isn't it, Brian? There's a bird making a very interesting call there. Anyway, the hyenas, which is what hyenas do, of course, tipped over the dustbin, and they didn't seem to get anything nice to eat there, so they left. I think that's a black cuckoo. You know that. I'm going to sneak at the one on the left-hand side. The other two are much smaller, probably starlings. Let's just go forward. The sun is right behind them, so we can't really see what they are. The black cuckoo. Oh, that's just flown away. We actually learnt that call. Scott and I learnt that call this very morning. It's probably the same bird. We live just down there, and normally the black cuckoo goes, "I'm so sad," and then they make that kind of swizzling call that we heard there. And Scott and I didn't know that until this morning, so I'm very glad to share that with you. We're coming down towards the Juma Dam. And apparently, I I need to remember that many of you have renamed the call of the black cuckoo, I'm so glad. Well, if the cuckoo is glad, and that's his song, I would hate to hear it if he was actually sad. It's the most doleful call out here. The swizzling one's a lot gladder, I think. That's much happier. So, like I said earlier, I think that there is going to be some rain today. Well, that is what the weather forecast says. We've had 3 spots of rain so far, so that's very exciting. And thank you, Bill. That you obviously have noticed the grey clouds in South Carolina. Well, not in South Carolina, here from South Carolina. And yes, definitely looking pretty grey over there. We'll just have a quick look there. That's beautiful. That is one of my favorite combinations of colours, that deep grey cloud, beautiful green spring foliage underneath it, and it's all lit up by the magnificence of the low hanging morning sun. So pretty. Kevin, you send us morning updates every day, and thank you for them. You obviously watch the Juma Dam cam with great enthusiasm, and we really do appreciate that. And you say, is there any chance that we could name the hippo, or have a competition for naming? And your suggestion is that we call him Peter because he lives in a pan. Our younger viewers who don't know what that means, you need to look it up. There's a wonderful play by J.M. Barrie called Peter Pan, which you should definitely get hold of and read. And Kevin, I think that is the most brilliant suggestion. So I don't think we're going to have a competition at all. I think from now on, that hippopotamus, as long as he lives in that pan, will be known as Peter. Well done, Kevin. Great job. Peter Pan the hippo. He isn't in the pan at the moment. I didn't even go and look. He might be. Now, we do get this question variations of it quite regularly. And Ralph in Michigan, it's a really interesting one that I love answering because it's not easy to answer. You're saying, as a result of global warming, do we see changes here? Ralph, I'm not sure that our human eye, first of all, or our depth of perception in an area like this is, just from an observational point of view, is strong enough for us to be able to say whether global warming is having an effect or not on the bush around here. So I don't know. The other thing is to say that unless you were in the same area, so looking at the same clearing for sort of 15 years at a time, I don't think you would notice a huge difference. That said, the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is definitely going to cause an increase in the amount of woody versus herbaceous vegetation. Now, woody vegetation, unsurprisingly, is the trees. Herbaceous vegetation is grasses and the other things that don't make wood, basically annual plants and grasses. And apparently the trees will thrive off extra carbon dioxide, whereas the grasses, and then they will outcompete the grasses. The grasses will be unable to grow. Now that will have make an inevitable difference to the number of grazers and the species diversity and the suite of species that are able to survive out here. So you may eventually, say in 20 years' time, find that there are a huge number more browsers than there are grazers around here, and the bush might be thicker, and so that could be an inevitable consequence. Of course, in an area like this as well, though, because we do intervene a bit. So I mean, quarantine clearings is not naturally clear like that. It was cleared many years ago, and this is kind of more natural vegetation for this area. You can see it's a bit thicker. We are just next to a riverbed, so that's why it's extra thick in this area. But this could well become thicker as global warming increases with increasing CO2 levels. Very interesting question, that. And yeah, only time will tell, I'm afraid. One of the misconceptions of bush clearing, certainly in this area, is that fire will kill trees and bush. Now, fire almost universally does nothing for trees and bush. And Barbara, you're asking about controlled burning, and you've seen some areas are clearer than others. No, so quarantine clearings was cleared of trees many years ago. I don't know what method they used, but it's remained clear, which I think is very interesting. It's not maintained with fire, it's not maintained with anything. It's just the grasses have managed to stave off some of the trees coming back up. That said, we've had some dry times now, and all down the western slopes of quarantine clearings there's a great explosion of silver cluster leaf trees. They're all this big. But I think that you'll find that that's probably because we've had dry years, and so the grass seeds have been unable to compete with the tree seeds, because the trees, of course, can put roots down to the water table and the grasses cannot. Now, fire here is not a bush clearing mechanism. Fire does not kill the trees out here at all. What it does is it kills off the top, and then just about every single tree that I know of out here will then sprout or coppice from the base and keep growing. So it'll change the shape of the vegetation, but it certainly doesn't kill trees, unless it is tremendously hot. And to have a tremendously hot fire, you have to have a huge amount of grass in the fuel load, and that will burn away and make a tremendously hot fire, which will in turn burn the trees a little bit. But we don't get huge tree fires here like you do in some of the forests of the States or Australia, or indeed some of the exotic forests that we have, the paper plantations up in the mountains here. Then you'll get a fire through the forest. But fire here tends to leave the trees alone. They're all adapted to coping with fire. What have you got, right? Ryan has spotted a giraffe, everybody. His kinsman. It's a very good spot. No road in there. We'll just have to see what he does. No real road in there, I'm afraid. That's actually a brilliant spot. Of course, is hiding from us now. And we were chatting about bush and thickening of bush. Obviously, it's not unusual for the landowners, especially around here in the Sabi Sands, where they have running commercial operations. It is not unusual for bush clearing to take place. It can be It can be a little bit controversial. You can go for it, Scott. I'm heading towards Buffelshoek Dam. There we go. I'm not going to go driving in there after him, but look at his tongue. Isn't that amazing? It's just fantastic. And you can see quite nicely there, you saw that kind of middle horn or calcification of the skull that takes place. I think he's quite an old boy. And it's a little bit like with human beings, it happens in rugby players and football players that keep bashing their heads against other people. Eventually they do get a thickening of the skull because it repairs itself continuously. Now, giraffe do the same thing when they fight. They thrash their heads against each other, and that eventually results in this kind of damage and then thickening of the skull. I think there's a hornbill nest here, Brian. See the hornbill there? Look. I just heard some squawking, like it was a youngster calling. We'll sneak a little bit forward. I don't want to get too close in case the hornbill might come back. There we go. I'm sure there's a nest in there. Let's have a look. I'll just look up there. We can hear them. I think it's to the side. Let's go a bit closer now. Probably just on the side. What do you think, Brian? Do you think in that big hole there, maybe?
Maybe.
Very large hole.
Let's see.
So, I don't know if you're aware of how hornbills breed, but it is an astonishing strategy that they have. The males, or what will happen is that they will have a hole like that. That looks, is much too big normally. I suspect that that's a knot, and inside it is a much smaller hole. And it'll be sealed up by the female. She'll go inside, shed all her feathers, and so she becomes very vulnerable because she's naked. And she then lays her eggs and incubates them on a bed of her own feathers. And then the male will feed her through a little slit in they kind of build up they close the hole with excrement, and then when the chicks hatch, by the time they hatch, she's normally got some feathers back, and she'll climb out of that, and they'll reseal it and feed the chicks in the same manner until they're old enough to fledge. I think probably that's what's going on there, but hornbill doesn't seem to be coming back at this stage. Right, let us forge on towards Buffelshoek Dam. News on the wireless, everybody. That's the radio, for those of you like Josh who don't know what a wireless is. You've been wireless your whole lives. Is that a leopard has been found. Brent Leo Smith managed to find it somewhere around Impala Plains. We're not going to go there because we're quite far away, but Scott is on his way there. So with any luck, we will have a leopard to look at fairly soon. She is very close to the boundary though, so maybe not. Ooh, very nice idea here from Chris Rogue. You want to know how many birds do we think we'll see at Buffelshoek Dam? How many different species? Well, everybody, you can have a guess if you like. I'm going to push us and say we'll manage to see 20 while we're there. We're not too far from there now, and it is some of the last water in the area. So, Chris, let's go with 20. Let's see if we can succeed with that. Gilly in Milwaukee, I think you're stretching it a little here. You say that hippopotamus in the Juma Dam, Juma Pan, is a female. We can demonium after pandemonium. Gilly, I think that's a stretch, to be honest. But in the absence of better suggestions, we can certainly go for it. I suppose we could call her D for short. That would be okay. Here. And I hold off talking to you. I did see some green pigeons which flew past, so we won't. Brilliant stuff. Scott has got to the leopard. Let's go and have a look there.
Well, look at this. Big thanks to Brent and Jamie who found this leopard, and she's just gone up this marula tree. You can see she's panting quite heavily. She's been on the move. And Brent seems to think it's Karula. And I'm just having a closer look through my binoculars. To be honest, I can't tell, and maybe that's just because I haven't seen Karula up a tree for so long. But let's see if she turns her head towards us and I get a frontal view. She's got a few spots that kind of vaguely spell out wow between her eyes, and there you might be able to see them. And I'm sure you guys, especially some of our leopard identification experts, may have an idea as to who she is. So please let us know your thoughts. Is this Karula? It doesn't look like Shadow to me. That's for certain. I'm willing to say that. Oh, awesome. She's on the move now. Oh, but not to the best spot for us. So we are going to reposition ever so slightly and make the most of this wonderful scene. It'll be interesting to see how long she stays up here for. I know follow.
Well, Chris, we're now counting birds. At Biffle's Hook, we have Egyptian geese. It's not quite the plethora of things that I was hoping for. Let's just check how many goslings there are left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all still there. It's lucky. I'm going to count the grey heron that flew off when we got here, Chris. So we're going to have 2 for that one. There was also woolly-necked stork, which also flew off, so we're going to count that one too. We're on 3. That's not looking particularly hopeful. I was hoping for much more than that. We'll just scour the fringes. So thank you, Edward. You say 4 hippo, 13 birds, and a wet hyena might make an appearance, right? We've gone to 3 birds. Oh, there, if we go to the hippo, we can see that there are...
I was just there.
Were you? Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 4, Brian, or 5? I think it is 4, hey? 4 hippos and a hummerkop there, so that's 4 birds. Some fairly astonished looking waterbuck. We don't really seem to understand why we would want to be here looking at them. I also saw a blacksmith lapwing, so that's 5 birds. Gosh, we're not doing a particularly good job on the bird front. He's a very confiding waterbuck. They don't normally this nice to us. Just peeping at another vehicle coming past here is that waterbuck. We're going to count that francolin that's calling there. Crested francolin, so we'll take 6 birds. What else can we hear? There's the blacksmith lapwing there, Brian. On the far, just below the peninsula, the Biffle's Hook Peninsula. There we go. Now it is much cooler than it has been here, and I wonder if that isn't the harbinger of rain, which would be very nice. And I think it's also the reason that there isn't quite the same action as there is here, or there has been in the last little while. There must be a 3-banded plover around here somewhere. No 3-banded plover. Now this is astonishing. So let's go back to Scott. They've managed to find some signal, and just astonishing, and I'd like you to ask Scott about this. How on earth did Karula get from the far east to the far west in the space of yesterday? Enjoy her, and I'll see you just now.
So we've come back into the spot where we were initially, and thankfully she's positioned her head in a spot where we can now see her and also have signal. So things are looking good. She has got comfortable, and just before we reposition, I was mentioning that I'm not too sure. It'll be interesting at least to see how long she stays up here, and it'll be also interesting to know your thoughts as to who you think she is. I do think it is in fact Karula, and she's moved a long distance from where she was seen yesterday. She was seen on our northeastern boundary around Buffelshoek Waterhole, whereas now she's kind of on our central, in terms of north and south portion of Djuma, but quite far west, so we're very close to Arathusa, our western boundary. So she's gone from the northeastern to the kind of central western portions of Djuma, and some of our leopard ID experts, Ellen and Raisa, have sent through their confirmations that they also believe it is Karula. And if you are joining for the first time or you are new to Safari Live, it's important to know that you can distinguish between the different leopards in this area, and we follow their lives quite closely. This female has raised many litters and is a hugely successful mother. And lots of people have spent a lot of time with her over the years. Some of you, the viewers, have got to see her raising multiple litters of cubs. I have yet to be so fortunate and arrived when she was kind of spending less time with two of her last cubs, which are approaching 3 years of age now, two brothers. So a wonderful thing about the summer months is that leopards tend to spend a lot of time up in these very comfortable marula trees. And that's because they get a nice breeze up there, and it's also nice and shady, whereas in winter it's obviously not as hot, so they're not in search of cool spots as much as they are in summer, but also there are no leaves on these marula trees, so it wouldn't be nearly as comforting and cool. Well, happy to hear that a lot more of you are also sending through confirmation that you also believe it is Karula. Chris and many others, and Anne-Marie has said a big thank you to Brent and Jamie. We'll be sure to pass that on to them. They've just left the sighting, so I cannot do that personally. I think they have made space for a few other people who may be making their way here. Now, interestingly, literally seconds before Brent found this female leopard, Tibbs and I bumped into some male leopard tracks, and who knows, maybe James might have some luck in working out where that male leopard has gone. I left those tracks and raced across here as soon as I heard the good news, but the male who's left those tracks behind on kind of the central parts of Djuma could well have been one of her older sons that I was speaking about earlier, Kunuma or Quarantine, who do come back and visit their old home turf from time to time. ex-Rangers just brought up a great point in the comment they made, saying that they love the way leopards laze about up in trees, but they're not sure exactly how comfy it is and whether they would like to do it. And you're right, ex-Ranger, it's not that easy to get comfortable up in trees, and that's why typically leopards will prefer to sleep on the ground. And often when they have a kill, this is a very good example of that, because they spend time in a given area and leave the kill up in the tree and often go down onto the ground to sleep. But as I was mentioning earlier, because of the heat in the summer, they're willing to sacrifice a little bit of comfort in terms of where they're sleeping and rather make sure that they're nice and cool. So it's a trade-off. But for now, I think she has found herself one of the more comfortable spots she could have found on this marula tree. And each tree will have obviously slightly different bends and weaves in these large horizontal branches that will affect their comfiness. But this looks like a good spot for now. I'm sure a lot of you agree. Now, Dr. Debbie's just brought up a good point. It looks like her belly is quite full. And do we know of a kill stash nearby? It is a good point, Dr. Debbie, but I think the reason why her stomach does look full is simply because of the way she's lying. She's got her whole belly kind of pushed out facing towards us, and that's why she looks very full. I don't think it necessarily is the case. But she may have had a small snack last night. That certainly is possible, but I also don't think she does have a kill nearby. Brent followed her for quite some distance, and that means it's unlikely she would have walked a long way away from her kill. Once they've made a kill, they usually stay right below it if it's up in a tree, or right next to it if it's not hoisted, until it's finished, unless of course they leave it to go for a drink, but then they will generally head to a water source, drink, and head straight back to their kill. So I don't think there is a kill nearby. She may have had a small meal last night, that is possible, but I think her stomach does look so full simply because of the way she's lying down. Now, talking about comfort and sleeping up in trees, one problem that this leopard may face, and I'm not too sure whether it does happen to the same degree it happens to us as humans, but we all know about pins and needles and how sleeping in an awkward position or sitting in a funny position, you may get a dead leg or a numb leg, or, as well as pins and needles. And I'm fairly certain the same thing happens with leopards, lying down in awkward positions in trees where the blood flow may be cut off to certain limbs. I think for now she's in a good spot, so I don't think she's going to be having too many problems there. She's using her one paw as a pillow. And even though she's asleep now, don't be fooled. She could at any moment get up. Some prey could stumble onto the scene. Possibly some prey could even walk underneath the tree. And it is not uncommon for leopard to jump out of trees directly onto their prey. It's something that I've never seen before. In this case, she'd be jumping down about 5 to 6 meters. So that'll be quite a drop down to the ground. But the scary thing is I've actually seen footage of leopards jumping from even higher. I calculated to about 10 meters. A leopard plummeted out of a large tree straight down onto an impala. So that could well happen. Could happen when these animals are sleeping. It's good to ready yourself for just about
Station. So some strange gremlins going on there. Sorry about that, everyone. Scott will attempt to move 3 or 4 millimeters left or right, and that will maybe bring Wendy's signal back up. Anyway, marvelous to see Karula there. Astonishing that she's so far away from where she was yesterday, and also nice to see that she's full. I wonder if she isn't looking for a male. For her to be moving that far and that amount, I wonder if she still isn't pregnant and has come back into estrus now and is trying to find a male. Who knows? But that is a big distance for her to be moving, and again she's now right on the fringes of her territory. And she walked all the way across here into Torchwood, knocked about there for a while, then turn around and come all the way back here. I don't know. Maybe she's looking for Mvula. I'm not sure. It's all rather interesting. We only managed to get, I'm afraid, 10 birds. Ooh. I just nearly had my head taken off by a knobthorn tree. Whoops. You're right there, Brian.
Instant vomit. Number right. Back on track.
But we're okay now, everybody, don't worry. We're fine. Whew. Anyway, I only managed to find 10 birds at Buffelshoek Dam, which wasn't a particularly impressive list, but I'm afraid there just wasn't anything else there. I was hoping for all those storks we've been seeing there of late, but they just weren't around. So we were chatting about the black cuckoo a little bit earlier. Oh, there's an impala. Excitement just doesn't end. James Bear in Kansas, you want to know if this was the first time we heard the black cuckoo? No, they were actually one of the first migrants that I did hear. And hello, impalas, please stop hiding behind the bushes. We mean you no harm. Very unkind of them to hide behind the bushes. So, James, no, I have heard that cuckoo a few times this season. I think probably almost a month ago we heard it for the first time. So definitely they are around. The one thing that continues to confound me, and I thought I may have seen one yesterday. I had to drive to some of the lodges at the south, and I thought I may have seen a woodland kingfisher. I just saw a flash of blue, but I certainly wouldn't put any money on it. So I'm astounded that they aren't back yet. Might have something to do with the rain. Maybe they just don't feel like it this year. Thank you, Brian. It's a rather disturbing noise coming from the engine. The key got stuck. There's another giraffe through there. They're not being very confiding, the giraffe, this morning. They all seem to be hiding. It's a younger bull. No, it's not much younger, a little bit younger maybe than the one we saw. And that's the only reason I can tell that is because he doesn't have quite the same amount of calcification on the skull. Let's carry on. He is not going to come out from there, and I don't want to chase him as well. Not necessarily. Right, on we go. Starting to feel quite sticky in the air. And I think that's got to do with the coming rain with hope. It's promised a lot over the last little few days. A biting insect in the back of my neck. How very inconvenient. And always smells one's hands after one's picked an insect off one in case it was a stink bug. That one mercifully was not. I'm just thinking carefully before I answer this question. It's an interesting one. Anna Marie, you say that your question is, could a stork, given that it can stand on one leg, if it lost a leg, would it still be able to hunt? You know, there's so many animals out here that do actually survive without limbs, monkeys being one of them. I've definitely seen birds with missing feet. They've got kind of a stump. They look like a pirate hobbling along. But without a leg entirely. You see, I think those storks have, they've got that, I think this is why you asked me the question, they've got that so very specific, slow kind of probing walk through the water. I think that they would really struggle to survive with one leg in the wild. So I'm going to say no, I don't think they would survive. Not for very long. Steenbok went running across the road. So just to give you an update, everybody, Scott is with Karula still, but there is no signal, and I don't think it's windy this time, I'm afraid. I think it's one of our repeaters has gone down. So if it was windy, I would head there, but I don't think it's going to make any difference whether jigger or windy. Look at that. Now, even from here, we can tell what that bird is, even in this light. And I'll tell you how we can do that. Well, let's go a little bit forward. I don't think he'll fly. And I'm going to see if you can't identify him. It's always a difficult time for the brown eagles at this time of the year because they're all here. Steppe eagles, which I haven't seen yet. Lesser spotted, Wahlbergs, booted perhaps, tawnies. They're all here now. In winter, if you see a brown eagle, you know it's a tawny. Yeah, we'll get a better look at it now. You can tell straight away what that bird is. It's extremely obvious when you know what you're looking for. So hashtag Safari Live. Tell us what you think that brown eagle is. What you need to be looking at, the diagnostic features of, first of all, the scruffiness. He's a scruffy bird. And the V. You can see a noticeable V created on his back by the fact that his wing coverts are a lot darker than his back is. So anybody who has a guess as to who that is, that would be interesting. Alright, so what we're going to do is to try and head towards Karula. FC Final Control thinks perhaps Jigger might be a better option there. So let's do that. We'll make our way around there. For the meantime, send through your answers as to what you think that bird is, and I will tell you forthwith. And then the anticipation of knowledge will satisfy you, I hope. Let us head on towards Karula, which is quite a distance from here, probably about 15 minutes drive, which is not very far at all, but that's where she is. So, wonderful birding question here from Savannah. Little Nyala. Hello Nyala, we're going to stop for you. Savannah, you want to know when the red-billed huilia will start swarming here. Now, for those of you who don't know, the red-billed huilia, much like the starlings in the northern hemisphere, flock in millions in these incredible swathes of churning and swirling birds, and they come through an area a little bit like a plague of locusts sometimes. And they raid croplands, and they'll come through an area like this only, Savannah, when there is sufficient seed to eat. They're grass seed eaters, and so because there's not much in the way of plains in this area where there are huge sort of swathes of grass, what you'll find is that we find the odd small flock of huilias. I've seen 1 or 2 flocks of about 10 or 12 so far this year, but you won't get those enormous flocks unless there's really exceptional rain. But an area I used to work south of in the Sabi Sands, there are huge grass plains there, and on those grass plains you will get those huge swarms of huilias, but only once the seeds have come up. They need the grass seeds to eat. That's why they're such a pest in farmlands. Marvellous. Suddenly there is a picture with Karula. Let's go to Scott and get an update there.
Well, who knows what exactly it is that's causing the signal to come and go. We're not even moving. But so happy that James is on it to make sure that there is going to be some picture from this beautiful scene. As you can tell though, not much has changed, and Karula is still enjoying her mid-morning snooze. She initially
Back again. We are on our way, everybody. I hope Jacob might be a little bit stronger in that area. Just wonderful to see these huge clouds building, and they're building at a different side from the ones that they normally do. Normally they come in, this kind of frontal weather comes in from the south and dissipates fairly soon, but this seems to be coming in from the northwest. So with any luck it will deposit something on us. Lots and lots of guesses for that eagle. None of them, unfortunately, are correct. Ginny, Power Funk Radio, Siberia, Zumi, Gilly, and Edward. You've all said variously. I can't remember exactly what you've all said individually, but you've said brown snake eagle, Marshall, Wahlbergs, and lesser spotted. I'm afraid it's none of those. The key thing to look at there is the scruffiness. It's a scruffy bird. Looks like it just flew through a hedge. And also that distinctive V on the back. Finally got a correct answer. Raisa and Janet, you are correct. Tawny eagle. So, big difference. A lesser spotted is extremely difficult to identify from some of the others, but in that scruffiness is what's so distinctive about the tawny. All the other eagles, the Wahlbergs, which that could have been, the lesser spotted, which it could have been, steppe eagle, it could have been. Marshall, it definitely couldn't have been. Marshall's much bigger, much bigger than that. But all those other eagles are kind of very neat and pristine. That thing is a scruff. So we're still about 10 minutes away from Kuruda, maybe a bit less than that. I don't want to throw you off the back of the car by driving like a maniac, so I'm not going to drive too quickly. Kind of shining and then going out and shining and going out, which makes for a lovely atmosphere. We're going to see, of course, one of the carnivores, most iconic carnivores, and the carnivores we probably see the most here are the mongoose, of course. And Siberia Zumi, you want to know how many different species of mongoose we get here. Siberia, thank you for that. I think that you will find that there are 4 common mongoose species here. You've guessed 4 or 5. There are 4 or 5. There are probably 6. So we get the dwarf mongoose, which is the most obvious one. We see slender mongoose fairly regularly. Banded, unusually not that often here. I'm surprised about that. They also live in big troops. And then the white-tailed mongoose. Those are the main 4. Then you will find, and I've heard records in the Sabi Sands, I haven't seen any here, of Meller's mongoose, which is a kind of mustard-coloured mongoose, almost the size of a slender mongoose. You might also find grey mongoose closer to the rivers. In fact, there are definitely records of grey mongoose here. So I'd say probably 6 species, maybe even 7. At least 6. Nice one, thank you, Siberia. kind of started looking for the wild dogs in early this morning, not knowing that the nasty little fiends had headed across to Elephant Plains, which I think was very nasty of them indeed. That's a long, long way. So they spent the whole day here yesterday in a tiny little area, and then they disappeared. Probably travelled about 7 kilometres as the crow flies, so quite a distance. Sort of request, and a good one. There was an incredible sighting yesterday. Brent Leo Smith had an amazing time with some elephants charging wild dogs, and it just sounded and looked like the most astonishing way to spend an afternoon. And Jean in Los Angeles, you're hoping there'll be a fireside chat so that we can re-look at that stuff. Absolutely, we're going to have a fireside chat tomorrow, and we'll certainly profile and highlight the incredible interactions that we had there. And I'm sure Brent will conjure up the same excitement he did yesterday as he tells you about them. That will be at, what will it be, 6:30 our time. 6:30 Central African time, 4:30 Greenwich Mean Time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, I think. And the rest you can work out. As I say quite often, hearing from our younger viewers is just great fun. Caitlin in St. Louis, you're just 10. That's a good age to be, I think. Caitlin, you want to know what is my favourite predator? I think it would have to be the wild dogs, Caitlin. I think they're definitely my favourite. But you also want to know if I like SpongeBob SquarePants. I have to confess to you, Caitlin, that I've never watched SpongeBob SquarePants. Brian is looking at me as though I've stepped from a piece of cheese. He can't believe that anybody could have been so remiss in their education not to have looked at SpongeBob SquarePants. So, Caitlin, I will attempt to go and have a look at him today on the internet and see. And I'll get back to you on whether I like him or not. You obviously like him very much. What is he, Brian? Yes. Is he a sponge?
He lives under the sea.
He lives under the sea. Oh, I see. Right, so he's a sea-dwelling sponge. Why is he called Square Pants? Any idea? Does he? Okay. SpongeBob SquarePants. Thank you, Caitlin. I'll go and have a look. Right, and I just heard the song sung to me by Jerry in Final Control. Thank you for that, Jerry. So, Caitlin, I'm sorry about the fact that I can't sort of engage with you on the level of SpongeBob SquarePants. I will attempt to remedy that situation. But the wild dogs are my favourite predator, Caitlin, because of the way they live. I love the way that they help each other, and they live in a pack with their friends, and they look after their sick and they look after their old ones. And they're also they never lie around like the lions do, doing nothing. Doing something really interesting. So, Caitlin, that's why they're. What is your favourite? Other than SpongeBob's hat, what is your favourite predator out here? we've been chatting about wild dogs and some of their behaviours, and what they do. There are lots of comparisons made with domestic dogs, of course, and they do make a kind of throaty bark if they're alarmed. It doesn't continue endlessly like a domestic dog does. It's just kind of like, and wild core, I think that's the name that I got. You'd like to know if the hackles of a wild dog can be raised. They do raise their hackles, yes, absolutely. I don't think it's quite as obvious sometimes as in a domestic dog, but absolutely you can see the hair on the back of on their backs sort of starting to stand up and bristle when they're angry. Nice question. Right, we're pretty close now to where Karula was, I think, if I understand where she is. Just going to call Scott quickly to find out. Scott, do you copy? What is the position of that sign? Talking to me now. I'm at the Bevanite Street. Okay, thanks. Alright, we're getting close now, probably about 2 minutes away. So far, we seem to still have signal, which is good. Difficulty is going to be when we go over this little ridge here. That'll start to be a problem. Which I'm almost 100% sure is not going to happen with the fireside chat tomorrow, that Jerry and James will do the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. Yeah, I just don't think that we don't have a lot of sea here, so that's probably why we won't do it. That said, so good on the signal front. Squirrel. Okay, now the leopard is just through here somewhere. There is also sorry. Hello.
Hello, Mr. James. Hello, Ryan.
No picture.
Oh.
She's in that large model.
Yeah.
Everybody. Oh, no.
So, I have clearly changed scenery and I'm now heading towards the quarantine clearings. James, as you are all aware, is hoping to get some signal with Karula, but I fear that may not be working too well either. That was our plan E for the morning, or F. Many plans have been made and changed, but that is all part of being on a safari. There are glitches as well as great moments of joy, and this morning's been a bit of a combination of the two. One request a little bit earlier was that and I'm not sure exactly who it was from, but somebody did ask if we could possibly head towards the lilac-breasted roller nest, and that was Marianne. And for those of you who don't know, there's some very pretty birds called lilac-breasted rollers who are nesting in the cavity of a tree not too far away from here, and I'm fairly confident we will have signal there. So we're going to head there. We'll be there in about 5 minutes, Sadly, you will not be able to see into the cavity in the tree, but I'll explain everything to you when we get there. What I'm going to do is actually take a video with my cell phone, and then we'll play that back to you. But we're going to shoot you back across to James's vehicle. The signal has returned to him and Karula, and we'll keep on making our way.
We'll see how long this lasts. I'm not sure how long it will be, but we've moved a bit, and Karula's moved a bit, and there she is, sitting in her tree. Somehow that seemed to rhyme. I don't know how. Beautiful lights of this kind of a morning. We'll just see if she turns around, and I'm assuming everyone has confirmed that this is Karula. There's a little wow. She's also dribbling. She was dribbling last time I saw her too. She's a bit of a dribbler after she eats. Not very elegant for a beautiful leopard to be dribbling. Isn't that a stunning picture? Isn't that just the most wonderful picture? Oh, look at this. Jesus. Oh, this is just too fantastic for words. Look at that. Very elegant dismount. Now we'll just have a look and see if we think she has eaten. Oh, that's just beautiful. No, she's not looking that full. Now she's going to mark her territory. No, she's eaten something. Yeah, she's not hugely full, but she's certainly not skinny. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that just the best? So beautifully coloured, Brian. I think that's exceptional on your part. What it's worth. That just makes the walls smooth.
Well, I'm so happy that you got to see what sounds like an incredible dismount from Karula down that marula tree, and very, very happy that you got to see that. We've literally just arrived at the marula tree that we are parked against. Just a little bit above us is this cavity, and within this cavity, I'm going to look down there. Just hold on there, Tibbs. There is a nest, but it's quite far down, and I'm guessing the birds are sitting probably somewhere around where my finger is here. So it's very deep and very narrow, this cavity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump up here now and try and film down there using my cell phone, and then I'll play you back a short video. I'm going to have to use a torch to be able to see and illuminate those chicks right at the bottom of their nest, and then try and get the angles right with the old cell phone to take the video. So, give me a few seconds. Okay. Like I said, it is really tricky to get the angles right. Morning, you two. Oh, your feathers are growing so beautifully. Oh. That was the bonnet of the car. Not enjoying my weight. Okay. Like I said, really tricky business to try and get the right angles, but hopefully it's not going to take me too long. Nearly there. So I just made that noise to try and simulate their mother returning to the nest, and that sometimes kind of gives them a bit of life, but it wasn't the case now. So they didn't move, but you are going to, from this video, be able to tell what is going on here. Now I'm just trying to create a little bit of a shelter so that we don't get too much glare or reflection off my phone, and then what I'm going to do is try and just zoom in a little bit. Are you ready there, Tibbs? Don't know if the glare's... There we go, you can see that. So you can see the two chicks, they're kind of on the right hand side of the screen. There's one beak and another beak there. There's my funny noise, but as you can see, it had no effect on them. But at least you can see some of their brightly colored feathers coming through. And now we will just keep coming back here and keep monitoring it. Like I said, not easy to get good angles and film very effectively, and especially when they're sitting there not doing anything. I just fold up my booster seat quickly, which gives me a couple of inches, which helps to scan, and it's a little bit more comfortable on these ancient seats that have lost all their foam and spring. Sounds like the adult is back somewhere nearby. I can hear it squawking. So we're just going to rewind a little bit, and maybe we'll get to see the adult return. I can hear it calling again. I've spotted it. It's just in the tree behind this Maruda tree. It's kind of the next one down, sitting in there. There you can see it. So don't worry, Mother Roller or Father Roller, we were merely looking at your wonderful offspring. And it's been so fantastic to see them develop. The first time I actually filmed them was on Tuesday. So we've got footage from back then, and it's remarkable to see how quickly their feathers are beginning to develop. On that first attempt of filming them, they hardly had any coloration, but already now their kind of little bits of blue feathers are beginning to show through. I think the adults interested in returning while we're here, so we're going to continue on and see what else we can find. Oh, quick. It's just arrived. Look at how beautiful the parent is, and it's got a snack for the chicks. Not easy for her to get down there. You can see that, or him. Well done, Tibbs. And Edwards just pointed out that he was waiting for the parents to return and start attacking me, and it's certainly not unlikely that they would do that. Certain birds are very ferocious, even to humans, when they get close to the nest, but thankfully these guys don't seem too concerned, and I'm so happy that we got to see at least one of the adults return and drop off a tasty little treat. may be wondering how we actually found that nest in the first place, and what happened was we were driving into this road, which was a access road to the old hyena den sites, and I saw a lilac-breasted roller fly down, catch something just on our right here, and it caught something here and then flew up and landed directly in this marula tree where the cavity is. So at this time of the year, and I was explaining to Tebs this morning, there you can see the little cavity there. So it was exactly from where we are now that we discovered this nest. But as I was saying, at this time of the year, you get a lot of adults returning to nests with their kills. So as soon as you see a bird make a kill, it's very much worth your while to keep an eye on it and watch where it goes and lands, because if it does in fact have a nest nearby, which a lot of birds do at this time of the year, you will then learn where the nest is. So we can do that with hornbills. A lot of the time that's the way we find hornbills' nests. There's such thin slits in the trees, such small cavities, that to simply look for the cavity would be very, very difficult. And of course there are many cavities in trees which are not home to birds' nests. So you've got to literally follow the bird back there and then you'll know for certain. And thank you very much for your joy and enthusiasm of this sighting, Anna Marie and Pizzazz. Glad you enjoyed it, and it's going to be really wonderful to monitor this. We're going to get a lot more action from that nest, and I'm sure we'll find more nests as the summer unfolds. Speaking of the summer unfolding and birds, still no sign of the woodlands kingfishers. But we did see some grey-hooded kingfishers, which are incredibly pretty. I saw two the other day, just 2 or 3 days ago, and they're also migratory birds. So they've returned back to the area, and hopefully we'll be showing you some of those. They're not nearly as numerous or easy to see and bold as the woodlands kingfishers, but they are around, so that's something to look forward to. Now the grey-hooded kingfisher will nest in banks of riverbeds, into kind of small cavities, or even occasionally in termite mounds, so generally in holes but within the ground, whereas the woodlands kingfisher, just like that lilac-breasted roller, will nest in cavities in trees. So those are two other birds that we can look out for, and also look out for their nests in the coming weeks. Okay, sounds like you need to get back to Karula quickly. Enjoy.
What a relief. I'm afraid everybody, well, I'm afraid the signal is weak, of course, but we've got some signal and just gorgeous pictures of Karula here. We watched her coming from just north of our position where we are now. She walked through the bush, termite mound, and I've been past this tree probably 100 times, looked in it every time I've been past, hoping to see a leopard in it. And now I know that some people have seen shadow in this tree a few times before, but the first time Karula's been in my time. So Karula really is enjoying having a lazy Saturday morning, and very happy that you got another glimpse of her up the marula tree. We've just got up onto the quarantine clearing just to see what's going on here.
and I thought I may actually pop across to a hornbill's nest from last year. And from what I've gathered is that often birds will reuse the same cavities, or at least try their best to. There's a lot of competition between birds over nesting sites. And that actually leads me to tell you an interesting story about what happened yesterday. You can just stop and enjoy a wildebeest while I do tell you this story. And it's relevant to birds and other animals fighting over cavities in trees. They're a kind of scarce commodity. Hello, wildebeest. You look like you're quite a heavily pregnant female. And last year we were lucky enough to film 5 wildebeest births. Where's the rest of your herd, lady? As I was saying though, I had a really cool sighting yesterday. I'm going to put some pictures up on my Facebook page today of a tree squirrel moving its tiny baby, carrying it in its mouth. And the way that we found it was there was a Burchell starling alarm calling. So I stopped the vehicle, had a look around and saw something running through the bush. I thought it was a slender mongoose. Usually starlings will not have a problem with squirrels because they are not predators. So wasn't too sure what was going on, and initially James and I thought that maybe the squirrel had developed a liking for meat, and maybe it had stolen one of the chicks, because we could see something in the squirrel's mouth. We didn't know what it was, and maybe we thought it was the Burchell starling's chick that maybe the squirrel had eaten or was trying to eat. It didn't make sense, but those were our initial thoughts. Then on a closer inspection we realized that it was actually just a baby squirrel that the squirrel was carrying in its mouth, with the starling chasing it. And we think that the starling chased the squirrel away from a cavity in the tree. They'll both be fighting over that, and it appears that the Burchell starling won that competition. Anyway, like I said, there's some really interesting photos of this squirrel with its tiny little baby in its mouth. They're not the clearest pictures, but you will get to see a view of a very small squirrel. It doesn't have any hair on it yet. It's the smallest squirrel I've ever seen. Susan in the Netherlands, and I'm impressed with your memory. Susan's remembered a very interesting sighting that we had with a juvenile woodlands kingfisher at Buffelshoek Waterhole, and it was probably in about February or March this year, I'm guessing, towards the end of the summer. And what this young woodlands kingfisher was doing is it was flying into the water to have a bath, which birds do, but usually they plop in and fly out immediately and then go and ruffle their feathers on a tree nearby. They don't really ever submerge themselves in the water. But this woodlands kingfisher, and it was a very hot evening, was literally landing on the water and then keeping its wings out and floating there for very long periods of time, minutes, just floating there, enjoying itself. And it was bizarre behavior that I've never witnessed before. It would then fly around the waterhole a few times and then plop back in and float around for a bit longer. And Susan, strange behavior, but not entirely sure why it was doing it, but I think it was just for fun. It was an entirely enjoyable, I guess, for this young woodlands kingfisher. Possibly also the fact that it was not very sorry, I'm just listening to James giving an update on Karula, because I'm interested in going out and staying with her after drive, taking Nikki and Jerry out there so that they can get to see her. So I'm just listening carefully as to where I'm going to need to look for her. I'm actually going to ask James if he doesn't mind staying with her just for a few minutes. Apologies for this. James, would you mind staying with her just for a few minutes? I want to see if Jenny or Nick's want to go out there. Okay, great. Now that I've sorted out the plans for later, we can get back to Susan and the Woodlands kingfisher that was acting like a pelican. Just found an Inyala doing some horn maintenance here. Stop. Probably I don't want to get too close and disturb it. And I also just want to make sure we get to see it while it's still in action. You teach that bush a lesson. So interesting behavior this. It's mainly doing it to scratch its head and horns and get little parasites away, but what it's doing with its hooves I cannot explain. I'm not too sure what that's about, but there were 2 young males in this area, so it may be, yeah, this is him showing them that he's big and strong. That was so cool, and what a great scene to finish off a good morning on safari. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Apologies for the technical issues, but sadly there's not much we can do about it. We are trying our best, and at least you did get to see some incredible images. Karula jumping down the tree must have been a highlight. Well done to Tibbs on camera. James and Brian, do say goodbye, and thank you very much for your contribution to them as well. And well done to Jerry and Nikki in the final control. We will see you all on the Sunset Safari, and already looking forward to it.